Yeah, well, it's getting pretty cold again, and well, as per usual on this channel, when it starts getting cold, we start dragging out all these diesel heaters and things that we've found throughout the the year. This one came off a Chrysler Grand Voyager, I do believe, a diesel one. I think is it the V6 diesel they have? I'm not sure. They had a diesel engine in it. It came in for scrap into the scrapyard that I work at, and I know exactly what these things are, so I was like, oh, I would like to take that off it. So that's what I went and did. Just in the process of cleaning it up. I'm going to actually have the intent to use this on my little van, not the bigger Vico, the actual CITROEN Dispatch. I've already got, as you know, air conditioning on that thing, which was fantastic a couple of months back when it was nice and warm. Now it's getting pretty cold. I've got a woolly hat on, and I've got my big coat on and whatnot, and still wearing Crocs, of course, can't help myself. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. Oh, there's actually some labels on it. Let's get closer with those things and see what they say. Yeah, I guess that's a part number from Chrysler. Yeah, look that up if you want. Even the barcode on it. See if you can get your phone to scan that. Yeah, I think this is a Thermotop C, this one. Let's see what it says. Yeah, Thermotop C. 5 kilowatt diesel. 2.5 bar. I don't know if this works or not. It came off a really high mileage MPV. I actually thought, when I first got this, I thought it came off a Rover 75, but because I have got one of those somewhere, I don't know where it is though, because I nicked one of these off a Rover 75. Although this unit is a lot more neat. The only thing it's missing is the water pump, which I do have one at work, I do believe, from off a... Okay, it's the Eberspacher version. So about the wind noise. It's very cold today. It's 12 degrees, however, it's the wind chill's quite bad. It doesn't help when your hands are wet and whatnot. So I'm trying. This was like covered in oil, which is probably why it's in such good condition. To be fair, after you clean all the oil off it and stuff, it's yeah, it's quite nice underneath. I'm using good old Built Hamber Surfex HD. I've never known anything like it for cleaning up oil and stuff, so that's what we're using. It's really good stuff. Honestly, all of this tray here was that full of oil. In fact, you couldn't really see this lip here. It was just full, where the engine used to drip oil, I guess, because this was, I think, just behind the engine, gearbox side, I do believe. It was an automatic, so I don't know if it was ATF that was all over it or not. Let me unbolt this thing from here, and I'll clean it up a bit more. We'll try and get into the nitty gritty of the wiring and on the thing. It's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me as well. I need to figure some things out. It's easy enough to do because one of the if you need to find out what a negative is on one of these things, you look to your fuel pump, because the fuel pump on this thing, or the dose pump, what they call them, the fuel pump on these things, they always have a negative going to them, and it's switched positively. So these two thick wires here, sometimes some manufacturers change them all different colours, and it's very difficult to guess and figure out which is the live and which is the negative. The easiest thing to do is to get a continuity tester on the negative of the pump, or one of the two pins, and if you get continuity to one of these two wires, these thicker wires, then you know that that's going to be an earth, and obviously if you get earth to the case as well, then obviously that indicates that your next, the thick wire, the big thick wire, is going to be your live. And then it's just a guess of whichever one of these is going to be your trigger cable to start it up and make it run. I can't remember offhand, but I'm pretty sure it's the white one. But we'll see, we'll see. One of these is going to go to your electric water pump, and one of them goes to your dose pump. So I'm pretty sure it's the white wire which you give alive, and that makes the unit power up. And you never disconnect the two big thick wires on these things, because you can put it into a lockdown state if you keep doing that, and only a dealer then can unlock it for you. It basically bricks the ECU, and it's a safety feature that's built into them. I'm hoping this has never had it happen to it, but it is possible. We'll see, which is why I'm going to bench test it first. Alright, so I took it apart. Unfortunately, I snapped every 10mm bolt off the thing, so if it does work and I'm going to use it, it's going to get held in place with a big hose clamp of some description, you know, them worm drive Jubilee clip jobbies, hose clamps. So yeah, all I've got to do, what I've done basically here, is to make it think the water pump is still there. I've put a load on where the water pump should go. Turns out that black and blue is the negative. It's what everything's got, so this has got a black and blue on it. I assume it's a negative. There's a black and blue here for the water pump, so I assume that's the negative. And yeah, it only makes sense. And I'm guessing if I touch this to alive, given it's not a canvas turned on machine, because sometimes these things, the newer ones, like for instance the modern day Range Rovers, well, the more modern Range Rovers, not the modern day ones, but the more modern Range Rovers from the 2000s, 2010 onwards, I do believe, they've got these on them, and they only operate with CAN-bus by injecting some CAN-bus code into them. My brother can do it. If you look on his channel, he's got it. I think I've got a link somewhere. Yeah, if I can figure out how those slide card things work in the top corner, I'll try and put one onto his channel. He's got it. So anyway, let's see if this thing fires up. It's not going to do much. I mean, of course there's no fuel pump on it, apart from what fuel's in the line, but if we get smoke come out of it and we see the light come on, that should mean that it's going to work. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. Find a decent place to poke this wire in. Yes. Nothing appears to happen. We don't even get any load on the battery charger. So yeah, I guess that's not, unless it's earth tripped. Did have one once that was earth tripped. Yeah, looks like it's a dead unit. That sucks. To be expected though, it was on a car for a long time. Oh well. It's probably in lockdown. Let's chuck more amps into it just to see. Just touch that on there, drain the caps in there. Nothing, look. Not even trying. It should at least be lighting the bulb up. That's how these things work, unless that filament's blown, of course. No, both filaments are good. Well, I don't want a temperamental unit, so like I say, if it's going to be acting up like this, I don't want this on my car. But it was worth a shot. It was pretty much a free unit. Well, if we're going to scrap it, we may as well take it apart and have a look and see what it's like inside. Two more sheared off, as to be expected. It is the Webasto way. I've not had one of these yet that I've come to where one of these have not snapped off. Even on the brand new one I took apart once and it had sheared off. Just the way Webasto put them together, I guess. Burn chambers, it's a lot loose in there, so it must have come out while I was knocking it around. We've got a nice big chunk out here, look at that thing there. It wouldn't stop it from actually running, it might stop it from starting. There's a couple of chunks in there. I'm trying to zoom in on them. I ain't got a very good light source in here, sadly. Oh, come on, camera, don't do that to me. Bit of a chunk in there. And along the edges. It's more interested in focusing on the shroud, sadly. To enable manual zoom on the focus on this is a nightmare, so we don't bother. Take my word for it. That little silver piece you see there in the middle, that's where the glow plug used to sit. That little bit at the back you can see there, that's actually a mat that gets the diesel soaked into it, and that's the thing that eventually ignites, and a big flame comes out of it and blows through this small aperture hole here into this chamber, and then yeah, basically works as a bit of a flame gun. They do work well when they work, but they're so easy to break. Having these things live under the bottom of cars does them no favours whatsoever. But it's where they get put, sadly. Some manufacturers are quite clever and they put them like in the wheel arch behind all the plastics, which is all well and good until, you know, they get damaged, the wheel arch liner gets damaged, and then water flows up at them. You get things like this happen here. You see how this has worn through. Well, I've had it before on one of these where one of the actual chambers, the burn chambers, has actually worn through completely, you know, and it started leaking coolant. And that, I think, is what caused the car to die, because as it was going down the road, he must have flicked up a stone or something, or hit something on the road. It hit this burner just enough to knock the lump of corrosion off it. The hole appeared through the corrosion, and the guy lost all his coolant. He didn't notice that because he was obviously driving along at probably high speed, and wasn't paying attention to his gauges or anything, and noticed his car was losing power. Anyway, he looks down at the gauges as you would, and sure enough the temperature gauge is off the scale, and yeah, and the worst of it is I think that happened in summer as well, so he wouldn't have been able to see any steam coming out the back of his car either, where the coolant was obviously vaporising, you know. He didn't notice it. So you can imagine high pressure coolant at the lowest point. Yeah, as the pressure goes lower, the water that's in the coolant starts to boil, creates an air pocket and pushes all the coolant down to the lowest point, which is this burner, because it was right under the car. And yeah, literally put no coolant in his system. And it I don't think it seized the engine up, but it blew the gasket, the head gasket in it, and the car was, I can't remember from what car it was now, but the car wasn't worth repairing, so he ended up scrapping it. And he scrapped it where I worked, and I found the found the cause. It ended up being the Webasto heater that had eaten itself through. Quite nice. That's the one problem you get with these when they're mounted directly to a steel panel. You can see here there's the 3 bolts where they would have been. That was mounted to a panel, and the corrosion always starts in between the panel and the aluminium, and it just furs up, and it's actually got to the point where it was that bad where it's actually, the corrosion has bent. See how it's put a dint in it there, look. That's the power of the corrosion. It's swelled that much, it dinted the steel. When I snapped the first bolt off on that, it actually went with such a force, it threw it off across the yard, and I'm glad I didn't put a window through. It must have been under some tonnage of force. But yeah, that's how they go. As people always say, they're never a maintenance item, but believe me, they are. And yes, in the UK you can live without these things, you don't need them. they only work, and they literally only work on most cars that have them fitted when you first start the engine as a supplementary heater, and they're only ever really on diesel vehicles in the UK. There is a very small few petrol engines variants around for petrol vehicles, and they have a little spark plug in there instead of a glow plug, and they do work quite well, but again, they suffer with the same faults if they're never maintained. So you have to keep them clean. You've got to be careful with these as well. Don't get the jet washer around them, because as soon as you get water into all this electronic circuitry in here, that's it, finished. Yeah, they are just a problem, and I know I say that and I want one on my van, but like I say, when they do work, they are really good. And if you can manually manipulate these things, they're fantastic. So if you was to, say, put this on a timer, say you go to work at 9 to 5, you would set this up so it would come on at, say, 8 o'clock in the morning, run for an hour, get your car all nice and hot, well, your engine all nice and hot, and if you're clever enough, you'll wire in your blowers in your car to come on as well. Make sure you have a good battery, of course. And what it'll do then is you come to your car and it's all nice and warm, and if there was snow on it, there would be no snow anymore because it would all have defrosted off, or your windows will be demisted. Yeah, not only that, but I also think it will, prolong the use of your engine as well, in the sense of it really reduces the thermal cycle count. If you come to your engine and it's already hot, well, how can you have thermal stresses? The only thing it doesn't do is warm your oil up, which will just warm itself up as it gets pumped around the engine. But if you use a zero weight oil, so your oil is runny when it's cold, so say like 0W40 in an engine that's supposed to use 10W40 for instance, well, your engine oil is already at the correct viscosity to be pumped around your engine. It's just the way I think of it anyway. You get a lot of people say don't bother doing that because it's well, one of the best ones was having a 0W oil can increase your chances of getting oil leaks, and I thought, hang on a minute, how's that work? But when you think about it, it's possible due to thermal expansion. If all of your seals and your shafts and things are all small when it's cold, you've got a gap there, so the oil's going to come out through the gap, and then when it gets warm it'll expand, only very, very slightly here, thousands of millimeters. It's enough to just fill that little gap in on the oil seal and stop it from thinking. It's why I always change an oil seal on the engine, the crank oil seal, when I do a clutch. It's false economy to not do that, and you always find they weep as well whenever you take a flywheel off. But yeah, that's just me rambling. Alright, anyway, thanks for watching. I'm not going to strip this down any further because it's boring, the rest of it. It's literally just a circuit board in there, which they always look pretty new. They're very, very, very rarely corroded, but you do get the odd one that is. Usually when the sides corrode, you'll have water on the circuit boards, but the sides on this are not corroded. Yeah, I really thought this was going to be a good unit, but at least I've got the nice exhaust clamps. Anyway, it's enough rambling, isn't it? I've been going on for ages. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.